years ago to start coming to the church and bringing you information about various ways that you can begin to build your family. Of course, Skip and I use several of the ways. There's probably, in some respects, everybody or half of you that we used on this panel to build our family. And now we have a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old, Timothy and Trinity. And it's by the grace of God and God's blessing and using resources like this to be able to get us to the place that it wasn't a question of if we were going to have a family, it was really when. And certainly God blessed us and we're excited about it. So we want to encourage you tonight and let you know that God has a plan for your life and for your family. And so I'm just so excited to be connected with Camille and the Cave Foundation, all that they do in bringing us the information and the services that they do. So to that end, I want to introduce Camille. I'm so excited that she's coming. Can we give her a hand? Camille is the founder of the Cave Foundation, and I'll let her tell her story. And so with that, Camille.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. How you guys doing? You guys sound kind of muted. Can we do a little bit better? Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, that's so much better. We are so excited to be out here sharing hope and encouragement and sharing the truth that infertility can be overcome. And in order to do that, you just must surrender to God and just remember that He has all things in control. And then also recognize that you have resources. There are people who have lots of training and lots of experience that are able to help you navigate through some of the peaks and valleys of infertility. But you're at a fantastic place because in addition to these resources, you have all of the ministries here at First Baptist Church of Glenarden that are here to meet your needs on an ongoing basis. So, and I know right now there's 4 ministries, the Husbands of Hannah, Sisters of Hannah, the Adoption and Foster Care Support Group, and then the Couples Infertility Support Studies. Yeah, so lots of resources, and so you know you are not alone on this journey. So I'm standing here right now as an overcomer of infertility. And I encourage you all to join this club. Overcoming doesn't mean you've already brought home that child. It just means you have decided that you're not going to surrender, right? And so I'm hoping that you all will make that decision, if you haven't already, that you'll make that decision tonight. My story is pretty similar probably to the story of many of you. I got married to my knight in shining armor. We met the first week of medical school, and after a 3-year fairy tale courtship, we got married and started trying to get pregnant on our wedding night. I knew I had endometriosis, which is a condition that would make it more difficult for me to conceive. And so that didn't work. And after a year of trying on our own, we dutifully marched off to the fertility doctor. And we thought, well, we're both doctors, and so, we know what infertility is. So it's going to be easy for us to get pregnant once we have this fertility treatment. And it wasn't. And so 5 years and 6 IVF cycles later, when we had not conceived, we were given some news that was devastating. We were both young, we were both healthy, but we were told that it was unlikely that we were going to conceive if we continued to do the same thing. Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Yeah.
So we were counseled to either consider adoption or a gestational carrier, which is the common vernacular is a surrogate, although a surrogate is a woman that uses her own egg and carries the baby. And Dr. Chason can tell a little bit more about that. But we didn't know anybody who even acknowledged they were struggling with infertility. So we really felt like there was something wrong and broken with us, because we were told not only did we have infertility, but I couldn't even carry a baby. And we really just felt very, very hopeless. And at that point, my mom and dad asked if my mom could carry a baby for us. Now, my mom was 54 years old, and she was postmenopausal. And my parents were basically empty nesters, and we thought we knew a lot, but we didn't know anything about 54-year-old postmenopausal people getting pregnant, and so we politely declined. But my parents were persistent, and after a while of praying and talking and praying, we said, okay, well, just go talk to your doctor because, maybe that will resolve this. And the doctor said, well, we don't think it'll kill her, but we can't guarantee much after that. It's okay to laugh. My mom is healthy. She's 70 years old, survivor of 2 cancers. But anyway, so we proceeded, and about a year later, she delivered my triplets. Wow. And those triplets are now 13 years old. So after, So after we had our babies, my husband, who is the co-founder of the K Foundation, and I decided we wanted to give back because we really did have a lot. We had knowledge. We were both physicians. We were broke, but we had access to money. So, our family lent us money. We had insurance. So we had things that many families don't have, and we still struggled mightily with infertility. And so we said, you know what, let's raise money and give back to one family, and in that way we would pass it forward. We would pass the blessing of people sowing into us forward. And that hope of being able to support one family has grown to the point where the Tanina QK Foundation, which is named after my mother, has supported 92 families. And one of our families is actually in the room. Hello. So we are here as a resource, and we do programs like this, partnering with fantastic institutions like the First Baptist Church of Glenarden to share the hope and the good news that infertility can be overcome. So now that I've shared my story and I've shared a little bit about the work of the K Foundation, I'm going to introduce you to some amazing speakers and resources that are right here in this community. I encourage you to take notes. I encourage you to ask questions, because if you want to see many of these people tomorrow, you're going to have to bring your checkbook. Tonight, it's free. So starting on the end, we have I'm going to actually introduce Brian Powell because he's going to speak first. Brian Powell and also Ms. Shayla Cheeks, they are from the WIN Family Services, and that is a faith-based child and family mental health network that provides support to older children in foster care who have mental health needs. Next, we have Ms. Sarah McKechnie, I'm sorry. And she works for the Barker Adoption Foundation, which is a nonprofit that is licensed in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And it is built around the fundamental belief that all children deserve safe, loving, and permanent families. Next, we have Ms. Rada Drabatskaya, who is a fertility acupuncturist, and she actually treats many families from this community right at First Baptist Church of Glenarden. She's locally based in Columbia, Maryland. Next, we have attorney Peter Wiernicke from Joseph Wiernicke and Shemming Law, and he has a fertility law practice. So he actually facilitates private adoptions, donor egg, gestational carrier. He provides contracts, and let me encourage any of you that are considering any of those procedures to work with a lawyer. Don't rely on the internet. The internet is great, and there's a lot of good information there, but when you have a problem and things don't go well, you want to know that you have actually gotten good counsel from a real lawyer, because they're going to be able to help you navigate through whatever it is you may encounter. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Rebecca Chason. She is a fertility doctor at Shady Grove Fertility, and I will say that their motto is "Believe It's Possible." And Shady Grove has been providing fertility treatment services for 27 years, and they have celebrated 50,000 babies born as a result of their services. Wow. So without any further ado, Brian Powell from WIN.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody? Brian Powell. I work for Win Family Services, and we've been given the awesome privilege of serving the community through services to children and their families. For me, it is extremely personal. My mother died when I was 12. My sister was 16. The other was 20. When I got to the age of 16, my behavior got to the point where neighbors had to take care of me. But as I grew older, I didn't know it then, but God was orchestrating an opportunity for me to be sitting behind this desk today to be with you, because I've grown and learned in my 50-some years of living that family is vitally important. And just real quickly, the things I got from family. There were times where I had to make decisions. There were times where I made decisions that weren't good. There were times where I would be places and people would say, you don't even like you belong here. And it wasn't my facial features that said that. There was something spiritual about what had been deposited in me that caused the world to see something better than what I even saw for myself. But that came from family. So every day I've been given this awesome privilege of being able to convey that to young people, convey that to families, and my responsibility at WIN is to recruit foster families, recruit clients for the psychiatric rehabilitation program. I get the opportunity to go into schools, talk to young people about their emotional well-being, because I found that oftentimes they aren't thinking about what they're doing, they based it on how they felt. But I want to thank you guys for being here, because every time I get to be in a room with folks who believe in family, who believe in the privilege of responsibility of parenting, I see hope. See, and hope is kind of selfish of me, but what happens is hope kind of drives me, and it increases my faith. And we all know that without faith, it's impossible to serve God, to please God. So for me, foster care, emotional and mental health well-being is extremely important in our community today with some of the choices young people make. I always tell folks that if some things my mama didn't have to figure out, TV would go off at night. At a certain time, y'all remember, anybody old enough in the room up to me to remember TV would go off at night? We didn't have 260 channels to choose from. So there were so many things that children today, I've got a great niece that's in the 2nd grade, and she is smarter than I was probably in the 12th grade. Whenever something goes on with my phone, I hand it to her. The remote control, I hand it to her. So our young people today are also faced with a lot of challenges that oftentimes get them judged and decisions made about them, that fortunately there are folks such as the Win Family Service Agency and folks such as yourself who care enough about our community, care enough about our families to even desire to get into the parenting game. And I say that because I have custody of my 16-year-old son, and I assure you there are days where I am grateful that I don't have to be perfect to be a perfect dad, as the commercial says. So I encourage anybody who feel like you're coming up with reasons why maybe you want to stop and not continue to press toward the mark of the higher calling in God, because he's called you to do this. I just believe it. I tell folks that every time I'm in their company, that if that desire is placed in you, it's like a seed germinate, and you just have to have faith in some positive reinforcements and activities such as this, just to encourage you to keep moving, because God's got a plan, and he is not mocked. I'll tell people it was ordained for me before the foundation of the world that God had made up his mind that he was going to make sure that I got good family from Miss Ella, Miss Gloria, Miss Louise, Miss Gerald. I could name so many people who showed up right in the nick of time to provide me with parenting. Even in my later years, there's times I call Miss Gloria today so I can get an earful. She's 80-some years old, and she still uses language I wish she wouldn't. She said, I bring it out of her. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. Miss Shayla Cheeks, my co-worker, who is, I call her my rock, because she keeps me focused, because I can get off on emotional, because this thing, sometimes it just means so much to me. Sometimes I can get off track, but she's been a rock, and we'll answer any questions you have. We have a table out there, and I'm looking forward to hopefully talking to some of you folks.
Sarah.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah McKechnie, and I am the director for our infant and older child program at the Barker Adoption Foundation. And we have been around since 1945 with the sole mission to find families for children. That is whether it's on the international side or whether it's on the domestic side or whether it's for older children. we believe that there are children out there that are very deserving of families, and we seek to find those families. So for older children, one message that we try to get across to families who are seeking to adopt is that there are programs, specifically our Project Wait No Longer program, that allows you to adopt a child without first becoming a foster parent. Previous to Barker, I was on the public child welfare side, and so I am very aware and very familiar with the process of going through public child welfare in order to eventually adopt a child. However, we understand that in public child welfare, the goal is generally reunification for those children, and adoption is coming later on. And so what we find is that when a child gets to the age of 10, and they have not yet been adopted or reunified by their birth family or by kinship, the chances of them being able to find permanency, a stable, loving home, drastically decreases by at least 50%. So right now we have 400,000 children that are waiting in foster care, 100,000 of those who are waiting to be adopted. And so our sole mission is to be able to find families who are flexible, who are able to manage the special needs and sometimes both behavioral and emotional needs that come with children who have been displaced from home to home in foster care, who have academic gaps just based on those disruptions that they've faced, or just being able to, or being removed from their family of origin, and the trauma that they've faced. And so we do have programs where you can be trained and adequately supported to be able to provide homes for these children. On the infant side, we do have two different tracks that you can follow to be able to adopt through the infant program. We have families that receive their referrals locally, whether that's in Maryland, DC, or Virginia. And we also work with agencies that are out of area, from Pennsylvania through New York, Florida, Ohio, wherever the agencies are. And we help families in selecting agencies that would be a good fit for you, where we would ultimately be the home study agency and provide the post-placement support for you. And so the number one question that our families usually have is, how long does it take? And we find that once you have an approved home study, it's taking generally between 18 and 24 months for you to be placed with a child. Now, ultimately, it can happen sooner than that. It can take longer than that sometimes. And the variables that we find that are most impactful to wait time is how open you are. How flexible are you in terms of being open to prenatal exposure, openness on race, and particularly the families that we are really seeking now in terms of what birth families are even looking for are African American families. We do have at least 50% of our placements where we are serving African American children. And the number one thing for these families is they want homes with families who look like their children. Where they're able to, have some of that heritage preserved, the culture preserved, which is really, really important. Do we do transracial adoption? Yes, we do. But if we don't have to, and if we can maintain the heritage of that child, we do seek to do that as well. The cost can vary for both the infant program as well as the older child program. We do operate on a sliding scale, where the placement fees can be anywhere from $22,000 to $33,000, which is billed. We bill for services rendered, so it's not all at one time. But as you receive the home study, as you go through the application, as you go through the searching phase and the matching phase, there are different fees that are billed at different times. For the older child program, it's anywhere between $5,500 and $9,500. But you do often have state subsidies that are able to assist with offsetting the costs. And Peter is one of the attorneys that we work with primarily in our agency, and he will be talking about the tax credit that serves again to offset the costs associated with adoption. So that was a very, very general overview. I, of course, am available for questions afterward that would speak more specifically to your situation. So I hope to be able to provide some assistance.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Rada?
Hi, I'm Rada Drakovsky. I'm licensed acupuncturist specializing in fertility and nutrition. So I've been doing it 13 years. I've seen all kinds of couples. Every couple is unique. Infertility is just your tickets through the door, but your story is very, very unique. A lot of people come and they're going through IVF or they failed IVF and they wait, unfortunately, they wait until 6 IVFs didn't work out and then they come. Ideally, it's wonderful to come as they're either starting IVF or right before to prepare your body. So I brought here, people are so used to vision boards, I don't know if you guys can see. So I want to show you a little bit so you can have an understanding how acupuncture works with this vision board. So a typical couple gets married and we're expecting then the next step would be to have a family and to have children. But nowadays people get married later. So by the time they get married, they have a lot of medical issues, they're stressed, we're living in the DC area, we have nutritional issues, a lot of couples are overweight, and all of that goes. And so when they come for fertility counseling to, let's say, Shady Grove Fertility or other centers, they also have to do a lot of lifestyle changes as well for IVF to work. So where acupuncture comes in the picture is that infertility is a journey, and it's a journey from what feels to you guys as an empty garden to the garden that can produce fruit. Because when you actually do IVF, it's like buying expensive seeds, but if your garden is not ready to receive them, it's not going to work. So where my job comes is that with acupuncture, you can naturally and very affordably to provide support to prepare you to either have IVF or have natural pregnancy. And then I support you throughout the whole pregnancy and after the delivery. Now, I'm a Western medicine person as well as acupuncturist, so I brought, sorry. So I brought, and I use statistics because I really like scientific research. So fertility acupuncture has been studied the most. Acupuncture has been around for more than 3,000 years. There's 365 points in the body, and fertility acupuncture has more than 166 studies worldwide. And it has a lot of really good benefits, but I'm just going to tell you a few of them that NIH provide. First of all, 1 of 4 couples was diagnosed with infertility since 70s. Acupuncture can help regulate hormones, improves menstruation, and regulates ovulation naturally. It regulates blood supplies to the ovaries and uterus. It improves sperm quality and quantity, and it assists in embryo implantation. Other functions reduces stress and assists in all phases of pregnancy. In other words, when people get pregnant, that could be dicey as well. You could not feel good, have a lot of aches and pains, you can be nauseous, but again, when you're under care of acupuncturists, it becomes a much easier, healthier pregnancy that you could actually enjoy. So I work with doctors through Shady Grove Fertility, through Maryland Fertility Center, and even Florida Fertility Centers that send patients to Maryland. And again, every story is so unique. So when you come for acupuncture, first appointment is 2 hours. So I will do your whole medical history. I will talk about your stressors. I will talk about your nutrition. I'm huge on supplements that are whole food, medically based supplements that will help you to prepare your earth, so to speak, to become pregnant. This is just one example I brought here. I'm sorry. Those are like little snacks that I would recommend to people. They're gluten-free, they're whole food. So my whole focus is how can you change your diet? How can you become more healthy? It's all of it. It's not just like I stick needles and I go away. I will work with you specifically on what's going on with you, whether you need to lose weight, whether you need to eat healthier, you know, what's going on with your stressors. So I really hold your hand through the whole process. Now, what people don't realize that insurance actually covers acupuncture. I'm a Blue Cross Blue Shield provider. In Blue Cross Blue Shield, acupuncture is included at least 30 sessions a year. And so when that happens, you come and I submit to the insurance, you will have about, on average, $30 copay. If you don't have Blue Cross, on average, again, it depends on your plan and stuff like that, it's about $92 per person. And usually you pay, and then I give you insurance forms, you submit, and you get reimbursed. Not the same as if you're a Blue Cross Blue Shield provider, but you still get reimbursement. Now, if you think about it, when you're spending $15,000 to $20,000 for IVF, you really need to prepare your body and make sure that you're ready to receive that, and it's going to work. So it's really wonderful to work together with fertility doctors, and we work together, we communicate each step of the way. I'm very open to communicate with your acceptance, of course, because it's HIPAA, you know, with certain doctors, and every step of the way, what you're doing there, what I'm doing in my office, how can we work together, how can we support you through your unique journey. And then, let's say you get pregnant, how can I support you through the whole pregnancy so you have a happy pregnancy. A lot of acupuncturists in this area are regular acupuncturists. There are only few of us for fertility acupuncturists. So my recommendation is to go to a fertility acupuncturist who is trained and known, who also does nutrition, because it's huge. You know, when somebody just tells you, I'm going to put 5 needles and leave the room, that's not a good idea. So anyway, so after all of that, again, as I, you know, with my pictures, I always say you become that garden that can produce fruits, and you can have your dream come true. You can have a baby, you can have a wonderful family. So that's basically my story. I work a lot with Camille, and I love to educate my patients. And I just, you know, I also like to be your friend, because many of my patients that deliver babies, they invite me to their baptisms. You know, I become a family friend, and they come for wellness, for maintenance, because they're so stressed when they have babies. So, you know, it's a very wonderful occupation to have, to be a fertility acupuncturist. I'm very blessed that this is my calling to do this, and I invite you guys to come to me and, you know, experience how it is. Now, questions that people ask, oh my God, the needles. Are they hurting? So the needles are very thin, they're hair thin. And when they're you know, they don't get reused. And so when they get inserted, you actually feel a little pressure, or you don't feel much at all. And it's very relaxing, and it takes an hour for an appointment. So it's basically you leave from an appointment thinking, oh my God, I just learned so much. I learned how to manage my life. I learned how to manage my stress, what to do with my nutrition, and feel better. And with that in mind, when you go for your procedure, your doctor will thank you, because you're at least so much more prepared for them to do what they're doing, which is their treatments, IUI or IVF, and it can work together as a team. So the last thing I'm going to say is that my job as a bridge builder is to work with fertility doctors to create a team that supports you through the whole journey. So that's basically it. Any questions, I will be there to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have attorney Peter Wiernicke.
So now does it work?
Yeah.
So now we can go back to the stress level, because we're going to talk about some of the legal sides. I'm an adoption lawyer. I also practice in the area of assisted reproductive technologies, and I've been practicing law for 32 years, and I practice in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. When I started practicing adoption law, there weren't that many adoption lawyers. I was one of the youngest ones. Now I'm one of the oldest ones, and there's lots of us. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit how you may interact with a lawyer, what a lawyer can do, but also I wanted to give a framework from kind of what Sarah was talking about. So let's just talk about adoption first. And I put a series of articles out there that summarize some of this. When people choose to build their family through adoption, it's like walking down a path, okay? Because everyone says, well, adoption, it sounds good, but what are the details? When you choose to adopt and you go down that path, the first fork in the road is, are we going to do a domestic adoption, are we going to do an international adoption? Every family makes that first fundamental decision. If you choose to do an international adoption, you're probably not going to use somebody like me until you come back with your son or daughter. You would go to an agency that has a licensed program, like the Barker Adoption Foundation, who has programs in Korea and other countries, and you would work with the agency to adopt a child in another country. Okay? As a general proposition, international adoption is on a decline for a number of reasons. But people do adopt overseas, and so that's the first fork in the road. But let's say you choose to do a domestic adoption. You go down that fork in the road. In the United States, there are only two forms of domestic adoption. There is private adoption, where a lawyer is involved, and there is agency adoption, where once again, agencies like the Barker Adoption Foundation are involved. So in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, anybody can help you locate to identify a baby or birth mother to work with, as long as the party is not being paid. So in all three local jurisdictions, I am not allowed to match birth parents and adoptive parents because I'm an attorney. The only people who can do that is a licensed agency. However, many people do find birth parents who wish to make an adoption plan, and they search for them on their own. They do it through the internet, which is huge. And remember, I practiced law pre-internet. There was no internet. And so people would literally run newspaper ads. They would network by word of mouth. So when you do identify a birth parent or birth mother on your own, you are doing an independent or a private adoption. A majority of newborn, non-related children in the United States are adopted as independent placements. So those are the adoptions where you have a lawyer and the birth mother or birth father also have a lawyer, okay? And of course, the laws are very clear as to what can be paid, how much time people have to change their mind when they can consent. One of the greatest privileges I've had in my legal career, and I really mean this, is representing birth mothers. I get asked to represent a lot of women, and birth fathers too, who choose to make an adoption plan. It's a tremendous privilege, because it's one of the hardest decisions that anybody can make. So private adoption is one option on the domestic side. The other fork in the road was agency adoption, okay? There are two types of agencies. There are public agencies and there are private agencies. Barker Adoption Foundation is a private licensed child placing agency. So when you say, look, Peter, I don't want to do a private adoption, but I'd like to do an agency placement, you can go to a private agency, you can enroll in their program, birth parents come to the agency, and the agency is licensed to match birth parents and adoptive parents. So legally what happens is the birth parents relinquish their parental rights to the agency, and then the agency consents to your finalization of your adoption. In a private or independent adoption, the birth parents relinquish directly to you. In a public agency placement, which Barker is a private agency, when people talk about kids in foster care, those are public agencies. Those are the county, the state, the city, all throughout the country. And those are the children who have been removed from their home because of abuse and neglect. What people don't realize is Prince George's County Department of Social Services is a licensed child placing agency. And financially, they will do your home study for you. They will, they'll provide you with a foster care subsidy. And you can receive a child, usually not young babies, but if you do a public agency placement, the children may be a little bit older, but all of these children are removed because of abuse and neglect. So if you're thinking of adopting and you draw a little chart and you say, okay, Peter says there's first step, international or domestic, and then on the domestic side you say private or agency, and then on the agency side you say public or private agency. That's the entire roadmap to adoption. And my experience has been that the people who succeed in adopting are the people that are organized and the people that are persistent. And so there's terrific avenues to adopting a child. The most important thing, though, is to kind of take that roadmap, and I wrote some articles that are out back on the table on CAVE that describe them and decide where you fit in. A lawyer gets involved in representing you in a private adoption. Also, there'll be an attorney representing the birth mother. An attorney also gets involved in finalizing agency placements. Because once the agency places a child with you, you usually use a lawyer to finalize your adoption. On the great pecking scale, international adoption is usually the most expensive. Domestic agency placement is usually the next most expensive. And private adoption can be the least expensive depending on which laws apply. For example, in Maryland, you can only pay for medical and legal expenses, and you can only pay certain limited living expenses. So an attorney can be invaluable. There's a terrific organization that used to be called the American Academy of Adoption Attorneys. It's now changed to the American Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproductive Technology Attorneys. They have a terrific website, and they have tons of information. They also have all the lawyers around the country that do this type of work. Using someone who actually does this, lawyers are very, very specialized, usually makes the most sense. I did want to comment about the tax credit, because of course all of this does cost something. If you do a public agency placement through foster care, theoretically it will cost you nothing, because the county or city or state will do your home study, they'll do post-placement supervision, and they will also give you a subsidy. The child will get a subsidy till 21, they'll give you a subsidy to pay your legal fees. If you choose to do a private adoption, you know of somebody who wishes to make an adoption plan, or you're doing a private agency placement, there is an adoption tax credit. It did not go away. There was a great fear it was going to go away. A credit is a dollar-by-dollar reduction of your tax bill. Right now, the adoption tax credit is at about $13,000 per child. It depends on what your adjusted gross income is. It can phase out. It's like $240,000. But that credit is very, very powerful. Plus, your employer may have allowances and benefits for adopting a child. So financially, there is a way to plan. A lot of people think adoption's way out of our league, it's way too expensive. It really depends on what type of adoption you pursue. And let me just close with this. There is no best way to adopt. I've been doing this a long, long time. My kids say it's perfect for me because I'm just basically a big 12-year-old, so I'm basically a child myself. So adoption, the best way to adopt, you guys, is the way that you are comfortable with and that complies with the law, okay? And there's, whether it's agency adoption, private agency, public agency, they are wonderful ways to build your family and have a child. So there's lots of information out there. The group I talked about, the American Academy, we changed our name, of Assisted Adoption, Assisted Reproductive Technologies, has a terrific website. One last thing, if I have 30 seconds. You're also going to run into a lawyer probably when you do assisted reproductive technologies, okay? For people that are working with egg donors, either through a private agency or a clinic that has a program, usually an agreement is signed, and an egg donation agreement is usually drafted by attorneys. And it's now like adoption, the good news is usually whether it's the donor or the intended parents, it's really a matter of contract law. If you go one step further and use a gestational carrier, today these agreements are fairly sophisticated, fairly complex, and usually both sides have an attorney. There's a lot of changes. In the District of Columbia now, we have a brand new assisted reproductive technology law that literally went into effect like 8 months ago. It's a terrific piece of legislation. It's geared towards helping families grow. In Virginia, we also have a statute that's fairly old that allows women to serve as gestational carriers. In Maryland, we do not have any law. We've developed a procedure with the courts to get pre-parentage birth orders. So the group of lawyers, the way I always look at it is, like there's always a lot of divorce attorneys because unfortunately a lot of people get divorced. There's a much smaller group of adoption lawyers because not everybody's choosing to adopt. Then when you get down to the assistive reproductive technology attorneys, it's a very small handful of attorneys that do that. But a lawyer who's knowledgeable can be very helpful in making sure that you get the correct information so the decisions you make are appropriate and ethical. And as I said, the people that succeed, and you will succeed, are the people that are persistent, the people that are organized, and who have faith, quite frankly, that we're going to build. When people ask me, what are my chances of success? I always tell them, if you don't try, I guarantee you it won't work. So it's definitely worth trying.
Thank you so much. I want to add, there is, so it would be very easy for any of you all to Google lawyers to help with fertility support as far as contracts. But what Jeff said is so important. Do not just work with